Great. So I realize this is the closing talk here. So it's gonna be lightweight, no equations, just fun. Okay, so the talk is about almost matching exactly. And I actually co-run this almost matching exactly lab with two other people, with Sudeepa Roy and Alex Wolfowski here. Sudeepa is a database expert, and Alex is a causal inference expert. And I'm machine learning. So the combination of these three is actually really interesting. All right, so um, interpretable machine learning and causal inference, they're actually not the same thing, but they do overlap. So let me give you some examples of problems that sit in this Venn diagram. So I want to start with interpretable machine learning problems that are not causal. Okay, so the problem is, why did you deny my loan, right? Loan decisions are high stakes decisions, and the bank should explain why it denied the loan. These are not really causal decisions. The bank doesn't really care why the person won't pay back the loan, only that they won't. Okay, so let's go for a causal inference question that doesn't require interpretability. So what is the effect of this advertisement on sales? That's a causal question, but it's not high stakes. Like, what is the effect of, right? So this is a cause and effect question, but it's not a high stakes question, so you don't really need it to be interpretable. You can use black box machine learning to get the answer to this question. Okay, so then there are all these problems that are in the middle there that are high stakes, but they're also causal. So how will this drug affect this patient, right? This is a high stakes decision, and it's causal because it's an effect, right? You're measuring an effect size. How will this government policy on air pollution affect each individual's health? You could replace this question with any government policy and any healthcare decision. So for instance, how will a change in schooling affect educational achievements? So this is an effect question, and it's high stakes because it's educational achievement, and we really care about this. Okay, so how do we actually answer questions that sit in the middle there? So I'm going to focus on just one of these questions, which is just a healthcare question. So one good way to do this is through matching. Okay, so the matching is a form of case-based reasoning. So the patient comes in, and we find a group of other patients that are like her, some of whom got the drug and some of whom didn't get the drug. And from there, we look at the outcomes of those patients and compare the ones that got the treatment to the ones that didn't get the treatment. And then from there, we can estimate the treatment effect for that patient. And we get some estimate. So maybe it's like 1.83 units in whatever units the outcome is, like blood concentration units or something like that. Now, matching is a well-known way of handling problems like these. It dates back to the beginning of causal inference, and it's great for a bunch of reasons, like it's non-parametric, which means it can predict really well. It's interpretable, so the doctors can look at the match group and do a kind of like a chart review, like, do I agree that these are a good match group? This is a good way to estimate. And then, if you have lots of match groups, you can kind of smooth the estimates out afterward. This case kind of matching techniques for causal inference. It's like an all-powerful technique for interpretable causal inference. I can't even think of a better type of technique for interpretable causal inference, to be honest. Okay, so now ideally, you would get a great match group for every single unit in the data set, but in reality, you can't, because observational data is not like clinical trial data where treatment is randomized, right? You normally would, your data doesn't come in pairs of identical twins. You just get a whole pile of people, and you have to figure out how to match them so that the match groups look kind of like identical twins. And if you have high dimensional data, you run into this problem that you can't find identical matches since there are no identical twins. Okay, so like in general, you want to try to match, put it this way. If the things that the match groups differ on are not important, so like clothing, for instance, here, the clothing is not important for health outcomes. And so it's still okay to match people even if they have different like clothing, that's fine. So as long as the things that the matches differ on are not important, you're good. So in general, you want to match on as many good covariates as possible, But picking which covariates to match on, that's actually tricky because you don't know in advance which covariates are useful and which ones are not. And so that's why I co-founded the Almost Matching Exactly lab at Duke, whose sole purpose for existence over the last 5 years has been how to construct high quality match groups so that we can do causal analysis. Okay, so why did we start this lab? It's because the techniques out there were not good. So I'm just going to show you the kind of standard techniques that are being used for like estimating treatment effects, conditional average treatment effects, and causal inference. The first type of technique are things like propensity score matching and prognostic score matching. So what these techniques do is they take the patients and they map them to a one-dimensional, like just a line. They map them to a line based on either propensity score or prognostic score. And propensity score is the probability of being treated, and the prognostic score is the probability that the outcome is 1, given that they're probability of the outcome. So it's sort of like the estimated outcome given that they're in the control group. So then what they do is they just match people who are close together on this in this new one-dimensional space. The problem with doing that is that it's not interpretable because you're matching people together who come from totally different parts of the covariate space and look nothing like each other, but they just happen to have the same probability of being treated, and so they get matched to each other. So we didn't like that. And then the next group of matching methods, what they do is they divide the units into groups based on balance constraints, so that the units, like there's a certain number of units of this type and of this type in each group, and then they match them. The problem again is that it's not interpretable because again, you can have people from like very, very different parts of the covariate space being matched together, and then you can't examine the match groups and say like, oh, I agree with this set of match groups. Can't do that. And then the third set of techniques is like things like coarse and exact matching, where it forces a human analyst to decide on how to bin units into match groups. So it forces humans essentially to decide on high dimensional functions in their heads, but no human can do this. So for instance, here I binned the ages, and I did it in a way that I had 2 almost identical units that ended up in separate match groups because they were like maybe 1 year apart. And so I binned them separately when in fact they should have been maybe together. So yeah, you really don't want humans doing high dimensional function creation in their heads. It's just not really a good principled way to do things. So this type of technique, the distances are not learned, and so they're less than ideal. Then you can use black box machine learning. That's another type of technique that people use for this, where they just take each unit and the estimated treatment effect for each unit is some complicated formula of lots of variables, and you can't really explain kind of how the treatment effect comes about. There's not really a set of matched units that you can analyze to decide whether the formula is correct. So you can't do any troubleshooting, no chart review. You don't really trust the results or anything like that. Okay, so why we started this lab is that we wanted to match units almost exactly on the covariates themselves. So we wanted each match group to be really tight in terms of the actual covariates, and especially the covariates that are important for the outcome. This is interpretable. It allows you to troubleshoot the match groups really easily and just decide whether you can trust your analysis. We wanted the algorithms to be fast. We wanted them to run very quickly in just a matter of seconds or minutes. For large data sets, we wanted to be able to finish in an hour, 2 hours would be great. We wanted it to work on data sets that were so big they didn't even fit in main memory. And we wanted to learn the distance metric using machine learning on a separate training set so that the distance metric would be accurate and we could get accurate estimates of the treatment effect. Now, we designed several software packages for doing this, and I want to show you just some kind of key results on these. If I have more time at the end, I'll add a few more slides, but for now, I want to show you just some very basic results to give you the intuition for what these are doing. So I'm going to talk about our results from the Malts package. Malts is matching after learning to stretch. That's what Malts means. So yeah, so what it does, it's actually a really interesting technique. It creates an interpretable stretch distance metric that stretches the covariates according to how important they are. So if you knew, or if the machine learning says that age is an important variable, it'll stretch out age a lot so that when you match, you're going to be matching very closely on age. And if it determines that a variable is not important, like let's say that race is not important, then it just compresses that variable to like nothing so that it can just match on all different races and it just doesn't care. Okay, and the stretch of each covariate is determined from machine learning on a separate training set. So the stretchiness of each variable, the importance of stretching each variable, comes from a separate training set. So this is just the most basic setting of the potential outcomes framework. Here, X are patient characteristics, like the patient's medical history and their demographics and stuff. Y is outcomes, like whether the patient got a stroke. And T is a drug. Okay. And we're trying to use the Ys to estimate what would happen if the patient was treated versus if they weren't. And we are trying to find people who have similar X's to our person, but who have different treatment so that we can match them together and estimate the treatment effect. Okay, so I want to show you some match groups from a couple of different algorithms. So I'm going to show you first a match group that comes from prognostic scores. So let me explain what that is, and then I'll show you I'll show you a match group for the same unit from Malts. So I'm showing you a match group this is from the Lalonde data set. This is the most overused data set in all of causal inference. And this data set comes from a job training program. So between 1975 and 1978, they trained people for jobs. And then they wanted to see if that job training program increased people's income in 1978. So this particular unit was treated. So they attended the job training program. They're 22 years old. They had a 9th grade education. They're Hispanic, not married. They have no degree. Their income in 1975 is 0. And their income in 1978, which is the outcome, is $3,595. Okay. So we want to find a match group for that person. Okay. So this is the match group from prognostic score matching. Now you look at this, if you look at this carefully, you realize that it's not a very tight match group. Like this person's 22 years old, but so why do we have people in their match group that are like 30 and 44 years old? This person has a 9th grade education. Why do we have people who finished high school in the same match group? This person's not married. Why do we have married people? This person had no income in 1975. Why do we have people who had $37,000 in the same match group? It just doesn't make sense, right? It's because they had the same prognostic score, but that doesn't mean the match group is interpretable. So this is the result from Malts. So this is from our algorithm, and this is the same unit as before. And here's the match group that we found. So here, all the people are between 20 and 24 years old. So right around that 22 years old. We have some treatment and some control units in this match group, which is good because it means we can estimate treatment effects. This person had a 9th grade education, and so everybody in the match group had between 8th and 10th grade education. The algorithm figured out that race wasn't important, so it just put all different people of all different races in the same match group. Nobody was married. Nobody had a degree. Nobody had any income in 1975. And then we can look at their incomes in 1978 and decide and use that information to estimate the effect of the treatment program for this unit. Okay, so that's what we're supposed to be getting. Okay, now to use Malts, what you do is, and the algorithm does all of this for you. You take your data and you divide it into 2 groups, a training set and a matching set. The training set is used to determine how much you're going to stretch each covariate. So it determines how important each covariate is. And here, again, age was stretched a lot, race was just compressed. Okay, so then it learned that from the training set. And then it used the stretch matrix that it learned on the matching set to find nearest neighbors in the matching set. And then it uses those neighbors as the match groups. And then you estimate the treatment effect, like I showed you on the previous slide. Now, in experiments, Malts seems to be as accurate in estimating treatment effects as the best black box machine learning techniques, but it just happens to yield interpretable match groups, and so that's why we like it. So it's accurate, but it's also interpretable. Now I want to show you a result from the Dame Flame Python package now that you kind of understand what Malts does. So Dame Flame is a very different type of technique, although it still uses the same framework where you divide the data set up, train on the training set, and use the information about variable importance to figure out how to match on the matching set. Okay, so Dame Flame is only for categorical data. It actually doesn't work on like age unless you bin age. So it's really designed for sort of large categorical data sets. It matches exactly on as many useful covariates as possible. And it scales to data sets that are huge, like big enough that, like I said, they don't even fit in main memory. So the goal of the Flame Dame package, well, it's really two separate algorithms, Flame and its sister algorithm Dame, is to match the treatment and control units almost exactly. So for any given treatment unit, you want to match with at least one control unit. And you want to match exactly on the largest set of good covariates that together can predict the outcome well. Okay, so you got a treatment unit, you want to match it exactly with one control unit, and you want to match them exactly on the set of good covariates that predict the outcome well. Okay, it's a little bit tricky to figure that out, but that's what it does. It says, well, if I'm the treatment unit, I need to find at least one control unit, and I want to match exactly on as many good covariates as I possibly can. So if this person is my identical twin, I'm going to get matched with them. If this person is if I don't have an identical twin and there's somebody a little bit further away that has mostly the same covariates, but the important ones are the same, I'll be matching with them. And the prediction quality of a set of covariates is determined from how well they can predict on this holdout training set using machine learning techniques. And this thing handles very, very large data sets, and it works very quickly due to bit vectors and database queries. So I want to give you just some intuition about this for a little while. So the patient comes in, and we go, okay, what's the treatment effect for this patient? Well, which units do we match her to? The training set and machine learning says, well, we should match her on covariates 9, 2, 3, 14, and 6. Why is that? It's because there is a machine learning model with those covariates that predicts the outcome well, and there's a control unit in her match group. So I have enough covariates that predict the outcome well, and there's at least one control unit that I can match her to, right? This is the most good covariates I can match her to, and still get a control unit in the match group. Okay, so let's say that we have 40 covariates, and let's say that just the first 10 are relevant. So if we're using the Flame Dame combination package, this is how it would work, okay? So Flame uses backward elimination. Dame actually looks at all subsets. So it's going to match on covariate subsets in this order. So at the very first iteration, it finds all identical matches, and just if I'm a treatment unit and there's a control unit exactly like me on all the covariates, we're done. We are good, and we go off in the sunset and are a happy match group. So then I go to the machine learning and I say, which covariate can I eliminate and not ruin my predictive power? And the machine learning says, you can eliminate covariate 40. And so I do. And now I match on exactly on covariates 1 through 39. Okay, so now great. So I find all exact matches on 1 through 39, go back to the machine learning and say, okay, I need to eliminate another covariate. I can't find any more match groups such that there's a treatment and a control unit both in the match group. So it says you can eliminate covariate 39. So now I match exactly on 1 through 38. And I keep doing this where I ask the machine learning at every iteration which covariate I can eliminate. And so I keep doing that over and over again, and those are my Flame iterations. And then when I get small enough, I switch to Dame. So Flame is fast, large scale, almost matching exactly, and Dame is dynamic, almost matching exactly. So once I get down to where the database is small enough, I can start DAME iterations. So DAME iterations are more expensive, but they give you higher quality match groups. Okay, so now I'm going to run DAME. I only have 10 covariates left. And I went to my machine learning and it said, you can eliminate variable 10. So I eliminate variable 10. I work with 1 through 9, but then I put variable 10 back. I put variable 10 back in. And I say to the machine learning, okay, what should I eliminate now? And it says, well, you could eliminate variable 9. You could keep 10 back in. So I do that. And so I match on 1 through 8 and 10. And then it says, okay, now you can eliminate 9 and 10 and not do too much damage to predictive accuracy. So then I match exactly on 1 through 8. Then I put 9 and 10 back in. And then the machine learning says, okay, now eliminate 8. So now I match on 1 through 7 and then 9 and 10. And so if you're familiar with like the a priori algorithm for data mining, you'll see that what we're doing is it's following this, I forgot what it's called, this sort of monotonicity property where you never eliminate a subset of variables unless you eliminate all of its subsets, okay? So I'm never going to eliminate 8, 9, and 10 unless I eliminated 10, 9, 8, 9 and 10, 8 and 9, 10 and 8, like that. Okay, cool. All right, so I keep doing that, and then those are the DAME iterations. And then at the very end, we get to the point where there's nothing else we can eliminate without ruining predictive power. So here I'm left with covariates 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. I have to stop iterating here. If I eliminate anything else, I just can't predict the outcome, so I have to stop. And everything that didn't get matched at this point, there's no way to match them because there's no set of covariates that I can match them to that predicts the outcome well, and where I can find a matched unit. Like if I'm a treatment unit, I cannot find a control unit nearby that matches on a good set of covariates. So I call all the rest outliers and I can't predict the outcome for them. Okay, so I want to show you some results of this matching algorithm on a data set. This is a very big data set. It's got 2.1 million units. 75,000 of them are treated. This is the set of all US births in 2010, including health information on pregnant women and newborns. We are going to estimate the causal effect of smoking of the pregnant woman on the risk of child abnormal health conditions. And so the treatment, we've set it as that the woman smokes at least 10 cigarettes a day for the duration of the pregnancy. The control units are women who smoke 0 cigarettes a day. So we're looking at the outcome being birth weight. So we want to know whether the woman smoking at least 10 cigarettes a day versus no cigarettes is going to influence the birth weight of the baby. And we have lots of covariates, including all kinds of like health conditions and the day of the week that the baby was born, all kinds of stuff here. And I want to show you the results of the experiment. And what this is a plot of each dot here is a match group. This is the number of treatment units in the group. And this is the estimated treatment effect. And what you can see is that for these very large match groups, the results are very consistent that we're seeing a negative treatment effect, which means that the babies born to mothers who smoke is lower than the birth weight of the mothers who don't smoke. So in other words, smoking really seems to have an influence on the baby's birth weight. And it's consistent across all of these large groups. And even most of the smaller match groups, it's still a consistent result. So yeah, these are kind of smaller, less trustworthy match groups because they have, not as many units in them. Although they still have, 20 treatment units in each group, so it's still not that bad. But here there's like, 100 treatment units in the match group and lots of control units. And so you can see that it's very clear that that smoking really does influence the birth weight of the baby. We didn't find such consistent results with things like whether the baby would land in the ICU. That was not as consistent, but smoking, but birth weight, we definitely found that decreased. So I want to show you an example of one of these match groups. I'll just show you a small match group over here, so I can put it on the slide. And this is the match group we found. So this is father's age 15 to 19. So these are teenagers. The mothers don't have any diploma. They were all born on a Tuesday. The mothers were all teenagers. The father's race was always white. mother's marital status, they were all unmarried, no pre-pregnancy diabetes, no cesarean, first baby for all of them. You can see it's a very consistent here, match groups like no hypertension or chronic hypertension, and all this stuff is very, very consistent across the group. So it's all like teenage white parents with that's their first child and so on, and you can see how completely consistent it is. So everything's identical. Okay, so the match group is really as tight as you can possibly get. All right, so the takeaway is that matching is interpretable, but only if you match almost exactly, right? It's interpretable, but only if you match almost exactly. All other matching methods are either interpretable, like propensity or prognostic scores, or they force the user to choose high-dimensional functions, like CEM. Flame Dame, Malts, and AHB, they're the only methods for adaptive interpretable large-scale matching in existence. We've proposed this almost matching exactly framework where we use machine learning in a training set to learn how to match. It's scalable, it's fast, and accurate, and it provides really granular insights. I hope your main takeaway from this talk is that matching methods are extremely powerful, not just because they're parametric, but also because they're interpretable. And, while most matching methods don't handle large covariate spaces and don't aim to match almost exactly, our framework, Almost Matching Exactly, does exactly that. And it leverages machine learning and database tools so that it's scalable, it's fast, it's accurate. But it basically, most importantly, it provides this like toolkit for granular insights into the data that we study and allows us to get a much better feel for when causal claims can be made. Thank you.